Kensington Senior Living is proud to partner with the Alzheimer's Association of Northern California on this Ask the Expert virtual discussion on the Difficult Dementia Conversations. My name is Anya Yakubovich. I am the Director of Sales and Marketing here in Redwood City, North Atherton. Kensington Place is a memory care community in Redwood City, North Atherton. We specialize in caring for those with Alzheimer's and other dementias. Kensington Place employs safety and privacy-preserving technology, such as the Sentry system to monitor restlessness, mobility, and even continence. Our team is well-versed in the simple statements of philosophy of short sentences, eye-level conversation, and positive reinforcement. Couple that with 24/7 licensed nursing staff, industry-beating caregiver-to-resident ratios, and our beautiful decor and amenities. Most anyone will feel right at home. Our promise is the foundation of the Kensington Place philosophy. We appreciate and honor every resident as if they were our own family. Hugs, laughs, companionship, and patient support are routine parts of our everyday. We help our residents feel loved and secure by delivering heartfelt excellence in Alzheimer's and dementia care in a warm and beautiful environment. Follow Kensington Place and my professional LinkedIn to learn more about resources, events, and support for caregivers, innovations in care and research, and jobs within our community. Kensington Place, Redwood City, North Atherton is located at 2800 El Camino Real in Redwood City, California, and my direct number is 650-363-9200. At this time, it is an honor to introduce Claire Day, Chief Program Officer of the Alzheimer's Association, Northern California and Northern Nevada. Claire Day has been on staff of the Alzheimer's Association since 2001. She is the Chief Program Officer at the Northern California and Northern Nevada chapter, and as such, oversees all clinical operations and service delivery throughout the chapter's territory. She and her highly trained staff deliver community social services in the form of education, support, advocacy, and care management to people with dementia and their families, as well as to professional caregivers. In addition, Ms. Day oversees all research initiatives. Prior to joining Northern California and Northern Nevada chapter in 2017, Ms. Day was the Senior Vice President at the Delaware Valley chapter in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, serving in a similar role. At this time, it is a pleasure to introduce Ms. Day. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anya. And it's an absolute pleasure for me to be with you and to thank Kensington for having us here today to talk about dementia conversations and always being such a great partner for ours. So thank you so much for that lovely introduction and for inviting us here today. And I am going to just jump right in and start our conversation today, because that's what today is really about. It's about understanding dementia conversations and really thinking about some of those top difficult conversations that people encounter when dealing with dementia. And there's lots of things we could be talking about, but today we're going to focus on three in particular: driving, going to the doctor, and those legal and financial planning considerations. These are the things that come up the most when people call into our helpline, when caregivers call our attend our educational programs. And so today what we're going to do is really think about some of those tips on how you can break the ice and have some of these difficult conversations, as well as help to plan ahead and build a care team that helps to communicate well, as in addition to all of the other pieces that go along with this journey, and give you the opportunity to really ask some questions and see how we can connect you with local resources. So when you think about dementia conversations and when you think about some of what these difficult things might come up, you might be noticing signs yourself, some changes in the person that you care about, that that are causing concern, often we find ourselves avoiding or talking ourselves out of having these difficult conversations around these issues. And you can see here, we do that for several reasons. And I think it's really important to mention this is human nature, right? It's easy for us to sometimes find the excuse for why we don't want to have those tough conversations. Oh, my computer has a mind of its own today. So things like, I don't want to offend her, right? She's always been independent. I don't want to step on her toes. We're only just starting to notice changes. I don't really know that it's a problem. When you're my age, things are always a little bit harder. I know you're so busy with your life. These are all common things that we have certainly heard, and I'm sure you've heard as well. But having a successful conversation is really important to do. And so some simple steps, and it's going to seem like a lot of common sense, but sometimes it's just a good reminder to kind of put those things together and really talk about them. So the first is sooner is better than later. Don't wait for a crisis. And we're going to talk a little bit at the end about some recent developments in treatments for Alzheimer's disease. And we know that the earlier we can diagnose the disease, the better off we can be in. I think for some reason, this is set on an automatic thing here. So I'm just going to go with the flow. So I apologize that my screen is moving ahead of us here. So we know that sometimes, we wait to get a diagnosis. It takes a long time to get a diagnosis. It's really important that we recognize and understand the importance of early detection. It does matter. And so we also have to think about what that conversation is going to look like, and really kind of developing a plan for how you would have that conversation, and really sort of introducing the topic in a way that's gentle, that's going to minimize resistance, sort of using that finesse, a little bit of skill and finesse that goes beyond just sort of some of the brutal honesty that could come out of these conversations, because that's what can make it a little bit of a challenge. And so really planning out how you would have that conversation, ask the person whether she would want to know, she or he would want to know if you were noticing changes in the person, and really kind of allow them to ask for that conversation before just going forward with saying something like, I noticed that you're not remembering things as well as you used to. Nobody wants to kind of feel that they're being judged or feel that they're being put on the spot. It's important to also know what you've seen and be able to kind of put that together with concrete examples. And so you'll see here when we think about taking notes about those changes, this can help you to really build that conversation. Be able to identify specific things that you've seen. But I think what's really important is to not only just write them down. We always think about that when we go to the doctor as well. You want to write down what those questions are that you have. I know myself, I've been to the doctors before, and I think ahead of time, I want to make sure I ask about A, B, and C. And when you get in that doctor's office, you can only remember one of them. So making sure that you have those examples, but also think about a way to be gentle in your discussion with people, keeping that person's feelings in mind. Having an opportunity to practice this in advance is also a really, really important step. And find a friend or a confidant, someone that you can really count on to have that kind of conversation and practice it ahead of time, because these are difficult conversations. And finding the most ultimate best time to have the conversation is really important too. When you're both relaxed and comfortable, and if you go in to approach that conversation and you can right away tell that it's not the right time, don't move forward with it, right? Abandon it and come back at a later time. Because when we think about going to the doctor and what that might look like, there's lots of emotions that play into this. Whether you're going because you have something wrong with you, or because, especially when we think about people who are exhibiting changes in their thinking or memory, all of these things could be responsible for what plays into how well that conversation goes. Fear, anger, stigma around Alzheimer's disease are going to be barriers to getting an accurate and timely diagnosis, to getting regular checkups, and to accessing medical help along the way. This isn't just a one and done opportunity. This is something that will go on for many years, and people need to sort of be prepared to be able to approach the medical side of this throughout the way. So let's change gears a little bit and talk specifically to how we can think about having those conversations, specifically about getting into the doctor. I think what's really important is to know the person that you're going to be addressing these concerns with. How do you broach that conversation to even bring up getting the person to the doctor's office? Because again, these can be sometimes symptoms that you might see that other people aren't really cognizant of, especially the person exhibiting the symptoms. You'd also be surprised to hear that we hear from a lot of our early stage advisors that they do recognize these changes in themselves, but they're just not sure what to do about them. So having someone use those words that could be comfortable with that person early on and help to have that conversation can be a really important step. Using things like the Medicare annual wellness visit is a great non-threatening way to get someone to the physician's office. Find that way to have them just go for a regular checkup, go for a regular doctor's appointment as part of this annual wellness visit. Your primary care physician has cognitive screening questions that they can ask within that visit. Find a way to partner the doctor's visit with some sort of an enjoyable outing as well. So we might be going to the doctor, but afterwards we're going to go to lunch and make a day of it. I think it's a really important thing to think about, is making sure that you're making this a non-threatening. This isn't just about that person going to the doctor and feeling overwhelmed. And then I think another piece that's really important is to get family to communicate those concerns that they're seeing with the physician and ahead of time. And you might be saying, well, it's hard for us to do that because of HIPAA laws, and how do we negotiate that and worry about not wanting to put the doctor in a position of not being able to share information. But one thing to really know is that you can always share information with a family member's primary care physician, with their physician, even if they can't give you the information back. So even if your family member hasn't had that conversation with their physicians yet, where they're asking to share information with you, you can still be that person to provide the information ahead of time and say, hey, listen, these are some of the things that I've seen, questions that you might want to ask about, just to put that on the radar of a family care practitioner. And I think if you get to this very end part and the person is still resistant, we always suggest things like a therapeutic fib to kind of help ease in. We've seen examples of where family members will schedule doctor's appointments together. So listen, we're both going for our annual checkups, even if you don't have an actual reason to be there. We're both going to go together, or the insurance company, Medicare, requires that you do this every year. We've used that one a number of times with family members to just kind of help ease the concern, the worry, the fear, all those things that we talked about with the stigma. And really, it's about getting the person and making to a place where they actually feel relaxed and not anxious about going to the physician, and making it, it's just a regular checkup. There's nothing to be concerned about. I think anxiety and worry plays into everybody when they think about having to go to the doctor about what could the outcome be. So as we think about some of these more difficult conversations, the other piece that constantly comes up for us when we think about some of these things is not just about getting the person to the doctor, but then what happens after. Once we have a diagnosis, and some of the changes in memory and thinking and behavior impact the ability for people to live as independently as they used to. Sometimes those can be some of the most challenging things. And driving is certainly one of those things. If you've seen things like accidents or traffic tickets or noticed mistakes while you've been driving with your loved one, if you notice little scrapes on the car, these are all sort of things to be thinking about. What have you looked at? What have you seen as you're monitoring the person with dementia's ability to continue to drive safely, that give you cause to pause, ask some questions, and make some next steps. And certainly planning ahead before an accident occurs is certainly ideal. I always recommend to family members that if your loved one, because I think it's also important to say, just because someone's been diagnosed with dementia does not mean that they're not capable of driving anymore. And I think when we think about dementia and independence, this is a big issue. People always worried about all the losses that come with a dementia diagnosis. And so I always recommend to people that you should once a month at the minimum, take a ride with that person. Observe them, making sure that you're putting steps in place to watch for any of those changes. Alzheimer's disease and dementia is a progressive disease, so it could be some time before you see any urgent things that make you really want to do something, where you start to see the need to express some concern about some of these changes that you've noticed. But put that plan in place before you get to that point, before an accident happens. Think about when you do have to start making those conversations about some of the changes, what kind of conversation is that going to look like? And there are things, if you remember when a few slides ago I talked about therapeutic fibs, and we absolutely believe that therapeutic fibs are a wonderful tool in communication for working through some of the challenging issues around Alzheimer's and dementia. The only exception is always safety. And this would certainly fall into that safety. And so it's okay to have that conversation and say, Mom, I would hate for you to be in a situation you wouldn't want to get in an accident and hurt someone else's car. You don't have to go as dramatic as get thinking of a serious accident, but just even start with the conversation around, you wouldn't want to hurt someone's car, damage someone's car, or damage your own car. Really appeal to that person's sense of responsibility and concern for others. Also, be prepared to think about what a plan would be for keeping that person remaining independent. Losing the ability to drive means losing that last step of independence, that ability to go freely, to do something on their own. And again, depending on where the person is in the disease, they might be very capable of still living independently and doing things on their own. And so find that way to offer alternate plans for transportation. And we've had family members, that have had concerns about, I don't have the ability to drive Mom anywhere, so I'm just going to let her keep driving. You have to really ask yourself the question, aren't there alternate plans that I could make that will keep her safe, keep everybody else safe, and still keep Mom or Dad feeling independent? Now, of course, with driving services, we have so many more opportunities than we ever have before. But safety, like I said, has to come first, always when thinking about things like driving. And I think it's also absolutely appropriate for you to use professionals to help with this conversation. Every state has their own laws around who's responsible for making decisions about a patient's driving or a patient's safety, especially around driving. And so talk with your loved one's family practitioner or physician that's treating them about what their responsibility is and their professional experience to have to be involved in helping you to make that decision. Because we hear this time and time again. My mother can't remember what she had for breakfast, but boy, she remembers that I took the car keys away from her. And so when we get to that point of not being able to allow someone to keep safe because it's the right thing to do, it's important for you to not feel alone in that journey. And it's important for you to know that you have other professionals behind you who are saying this and helping you to make that decision, and also being the bad guy for you. Let the doctor do it. That's their responsibility. There are state laws that require that, and it really allows them to play an integral part in helping to have that conversation, but also helping to be the decision maker so it doesn't fall on you, so you can be a family care person, you can be a care provider, you can be a daughter or son or a husband or a wife, and be able to hold on to that relationship and not be the person that took the car keys away. These are really, really challenging conversations to have. And yet they're so very important to maintaining safety, but also independence of the person living with dementia. Maximizing independence is key, allowing for them to feel that they still have options, that they still have choices about planning, about what comes next in this journey is vital to instilling their own self-esteem and providing an amazing relationship between you and that person. And so one way that we can do that is by involving people in these conversations. And you may feel a little reluctant and uncomfortable, even a little intrusive, maybe even disrespectful about having these conversations about legal and financial planning, but it's really important to talk about these things. So some of the things that might come up is to really start to think about why you're having these conversations, explaining that it's important for you to be in this, involved in some of these conversations, understand what's out there, what legal and financial planning processes and decisions have already been made so far. So you really want to start by asking some questions and gathering information and documents. And this one is really important, especially the part about gathering documents, because today the person might be very, very aware and clear on where every document is listed and what every password is for their legal and financial issues. But we never know when that's going to change. And we've heard stories of people who have lost deeds to the house or titles to the car, really some of those important informational things. And so it's really important that you start to know where some of those things are. My father, who I'm fortunate does not have dementia, but he's provided with me a flash drive that he updates sort of every 3 to 6 months that has the list of all of his documents, where they need to be, what the passwords are for his computer, for his accounts, for all of those things, so that if and when I ever would need them, I'm able to access all of those things. So there are some ways that you can do that in a very non-threatening way that allows for you to really have access to this information, because these are really sort of standard plans that everybody needs to make. And so whether it's understanding where these documents are, or even just taking those first steps to develop some of these legal documents, I always say anyone over the age of 18 should have a power of attorney and a living will. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And so it's really important that you are autonomous in being able to make that decision of who should make those decisions for you. And if you don't do that, you don't know what the outcome might be, and you won't have any say in that. And it's a great way to sort of have that conversation and talk about the need for these standard plans, and that everybody should be doing these things as we age. It's not just about dementia. And we want to break the conversation potentially into different parts too, try different times and locations, involve other family members. If you've got that family member that always can talk mom or dad into doing anything, this is the time that they need to come through and help you with some of these more challenging conversations. Always, it's a lot of information to go through. A friend of mine just recently had to do this with her parents. Her father has dementia. They were moving into a community, a CCRC, a continuing care community center. And she needed to have these conversations, and it was heavy. And so she did it over about 2 or 3 different visits. She didn't expect them to have all of the answers at one time. And this really comes down to involving others as needed and thinking about what that care team looks like for you. And so obviously the care team starts very basically, right, with family. That can sometimes just be one person, or it can be a large extended family that can help to support. And it's really important that everybody's on the same page, that everybody understands what's happening. And that means involving people in those conversations early, not just about what's happening with mom or dad or with your spouse, with your family member, with your friend, but also understanding what this journey really is about and what is different between caring for someone with dementia and someone that just has sort of a medical need, because this is a long journey. People that are diagnosed with dementia will live with the disease anywhere from 8 to 12 years is on average. And so there will be changes along the way. So it's going to be important for people to be involved in the beginning and then be involved with what that medical team looks like as well. Your medical team, we talk about this as really a partnership. These things can't go on in silos. And so understanding who the physician is, who's on your medical team, who's helping to advise on care is really, really important. But then also you have all of these other pieces of the care team that help to support you along the way. Your friends, peers, other people that might have been on this journey with you. So it might be people that you've met at a support group. If you're working, you have your colleagues. It's really important for them to understand what you're going through so that you can be honest and open about the changes that might be coming down the road because of caring for someone living with dementia. And then, of course, what community resources are out there. And we have an amazing resource called Community Resource Finder that can help to connect you to all of the important resources that you might need. And so just to give you kind of a high level overview of what the Alzheimer's Association can do, this is a very broad list here, but things from our website to our 24-hour helpline. So in our website, you can find anything from things like the basics of Alzheimer's and dementia to through our Alzheimer's and Dementia Caregiver Center, understanding safety considerations. We have 2 online communities. One is called Alzheimer's Navigator, which is a place for you to create an online profile and care plan to help you through this journey. The other is All's Connected, which is a social media based application or website that you can actually connect to others who are living this journey with you or are on this journey in their own way. We also have an amazing resource called Community Resource Finder. And our Community Resource Finder is a database that helps you to connect to amazing community partners like Kensington who provide levels of care, provide other types of resources that you might find outside of the Alzheimer's Association. We have support groups, educational programs, early stage services that are happening in the community. Today, right now, all of those programs are happening either through phone or webinars like we're having today. But soon, very soon, we hope, as the pandemic is starting to lift and these restrictions are starting to lift, we look forward to being back in the community with our support groups, with educational programs, and really being able to offer both for families to meet all of their needs. Most importantly, our 24/7 helpline, 800-272-3900. If you take nothing away from today, remember that number. That is a first step to finding anything that's on this slide, as well as connecting to all of those resources that are happening in your specific community. We do a lot of programs and supports around the state of California, Northern California, Northern Nevada, across the country. And they're all made possible through the amazing work that we do through our Walk to End Alzheimer's and Longest Day, our signature fundraising events, which is a way for you to get involved and join our cause. The Walk to End Alzheimer's is our largest advocacy and fundraising event, and it happens in the fall. The Longest Day, of course, honors caregivers. On the day with the most light, we fight, which of course is coming up on June 21st. But we also have ways for people to get involved and advocate for changes in research funding and in care and support programs on both a state, local, and federal level. We have ways for you to volunteer and give back if you're interested in joining our cause. And we also have something called Trial Match, which is a matching service for clinical trials. And Trial Match will help to connect you to being part of the solution of finding the end of Alzheimer's. You can match to local clinical trials that are happening, whether you're a healthy participant or whether you're living with Alzheimer's disease. And you can visit and find any of these resources online by visiting alz.org. And I think it's just important to sort of, before we kind of go into our question here, to think about the reason we have these types of programs that talk about some of these difficult conversations is because no one can provide all of this support alone. And so that's where your care team and all of those other things are so important, so that you can talk about those concerns as they arise, ask questions, meet others who are on this journey. Find the thing that's going to work for your loved one, because some of the tips that you'll hear at support groups, they may work on your loved one or they may not. And so if you call our 24-hour helpline, you can find people that are going to give you some suggestions and tips that you might not have tried, that you might not have thought of already. And so we are here for you to be able to do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And again, like I said, if you take nothing away from today's presentation, this number is all of it, or alz.org. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I know we've allowed some time here to be able to do some Q&A. I have to say, I apologize. I must have some kind of crazy timer set on my PowerPoint, which I did not know was there, and it's got a mind of its own today. But we are learning to go with the flow when it comes to technology, aren't we?
We definitely are. Thank you so much. I actually learned a lot myself today. I feel very well informed. There has been a few questions that came in through the session. I actually have a question of my own I wanted to ask. I had a conversation this morning with my uncle, and he brought up this new drug that we're all talking about. The Food and Drug Administration approved Biogen, I believe is the company, the first drug to slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease. It is truly a milestone in the treatment of the disease, and it's a beginning to completely a new future with the Alzheimer's generation. Can you talk about what it is and what we can expect?
Yeah, so, I mean, this was a monumental, I'm so glad you asked this question. This was a monumental week when it came to Alzheimer's treatment. Aducanumab, or as it's now going to be commercially known as Aduhelm, is a anti-amyloid antibody therapy, which means it's targeting one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease is the result of a buildup of beta amyloid, a protein in the brain called beta amyloid, which essentially builds up in the spaces between our cells and stops those cells from working. And so what aducanumab is going to do is help to combat this. Now, what's really interesting about this drug is it is, as you mentioned, the first drug that actually slows Alzheimer's disease. And we know that those other treatments that we've had so far have sort of really just treated the symptoms. They've not really treated the cognitive or functional decline of someone. And this drug aims to do that. So on Monday, as you mentioned, the FDA has approved this for early stage Alzheimer's or mild cognitive impairment due to Alzheimer's. And I think what's important for this drug is this is targeted just at beta amyloid. So that means you have to have the presence of amyloid on your brain to benefit from this treatment. It's a little bit different. It's not a pill. It's administered by intravenous. It's about a 45 to 60-minute infusion. And we're learning a lot right now about how that will be delivered. We know that cost is something that everybody is thinking about, us ourselves. Our role in this at the Alzheimer's Association is to really ensure access for all. If this is a treatment that the FDA says works, and that's what they're saying, the FDA has said that the science is there to justify approving this. As at the Alzheimer's Association, we want to then say, so then how is everybody going to get access to it who's appropriate? So that means working with healthcare providers, working with pharmacists, working to ensure that everybody, not just people that have good insurance, but that everybody has access to it.
Excellent. Can you please explain the difference between mild cognitive impairment and dementia? Just going with the results of what we just talked about, I'm sure the audience would like a little bit more information between the two.
Yeah, that's a great question too. And you think of dementia as the umbrella term, which really defines the symptoms, the loss of function, memory, thinking, behavior of enough severity that it impairs our activities of daily living. And what we've learned over the last 5 or 10 years is we really now know dementia to really be a continuum. We start out cognitively unimpaired, right? And if we do start to develop impairment as we age, it's a continuum. And so mild cognitive impairment, if we were looking at sort of an arrow bar graph, mild cognitive impairment would be on that first piece. Mild cognitive impairment is impairment in those same things, thinking, memory, behaviors, but not of enough severity to interfere with our activities of daily living. So we're still able to function almost relatively normally. We would just maybe notice some memory things, or that it takes us a little bit longer to do things. If a person is going to develop dementia, they would continue on that continuum into either early, middle, or late stage dementia. And this is where you're going to start to see activities of daily living being impacted, where you actually need assistance with activities of daily living. And certainly when you get into moderate or late stage dementia, you'd be talking about at least 2 or more activities of daily living. And what we mean by activities of daily living, of course, is bathing, dressing, things like going to the grocery store would be what we consider to be, it's a different type of activity of daily living, but what we need to function, making a grocery list, managing our finances, all of those things. So when we start to see impairment that interferes with those, we see that sort of cross into dementia. Now, dementia is a broad term, right? And so Alzheimer's disease is just one type of dementia. There's over 70 different types of dementia. And the change there would be what's happening in the brain. So I mentioned the buildup of beta amyloid, the protein for one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's. In frontotemporal dementia or Lewy body dementia, you would see a different physical change or biological change happening in the brain. And what's important to know about cognitive impairment when we think of that continuum is, while everybody who experiences dementia passes through mild cognitive impairment, not everybody who gets mild cognitive impairment develops dementia. So that's important to think of when you hear people talking about preventing cases of mild cognitive impairment. And we've learned recently of things that we can do in our lifestyles, like managing our blood pressure and thinking about things like diet and exercise, that we can do to decrease our risks of developing mild cognitive impairment. That's why that's important, because just because you hit mild cognitive impairment doesn't mean that you end up with dementia.
Thank you. Sorry, there was a little interruption there.
Oh, sorry. Oh no, did I get disconnected? I thought I did something.
No. I actually think you answered three of the questions that were upcoming. There was another one that I think is a great question, and it really rescinds to what I do day to day. What steps should you take after my loved one has been diagnosed with dementia? Of course, I can talk on that with my component, but Claire, what do you think are the healthy steps to start off in a positive approach?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because I think we have there's such a stigma around Alzheimer's and dementia, and there shouldn't be. It's a change happening to the brain, just like any other diagnosis you would get. There's nothing you did to cause yourself to get dementia. And yet there is still this stigma. And so I think the most important thing that people can do is whether you're a care partner or whether you're living with dementia, is to not be afraid to talk about it, to tell people that you're experiencing the symptoms of cognitive decline, and be proactive in learning all that you can early on to do what you can to make sure that your healthcare plans are in place, to make sure that your care team is in place, to make sure that you're doing all that you can to take care of the rest of you, right? Because we don't want some of those contributing other underlying medical conditions to potentially worsen some of your symptoms, and really just being proactive about it. And I think talking with your family is a great way to start, and really being honest and open about those conversations. But also know that you're not alone, and seek support. This is a journey, and it's sometimes a challenging journey for people. And so whether it's through a support group, whether it's through educational programs, or whether it's through knowing when you need help with care, and probably a great way to kind of punt that over to you to talk about your perspective on that. This is a hard journey, and it's okay to ask for that help.
Absolutely. I mean, the journey of doing research and asking questions is a very emotional process. Being a caregiver for my grandparents, I know that this is just an overwhelming and emotional process for everybody, including myself. And one thing that I would like to share with everybody watching and those who will watch later is call, ask. There's no wrong questions. One thing that I always say when you are touring, especially with memory care, is ask what the caregiver to resident ratio is. Are there nurses on site? Are there LVNs on site? Speak to the executive director, observe the caregivers, just really pay attention to the environment. Are the residents engaged? And a great community will also offer, a lunch or a dinner, try the food, see if this is the right environment for your loved one. In closing, for those who have missed the beginning introduction, I just wanted to say thank you to Claire for taking her time today to speak with us. And I will just briefly overview on the Alzheimer's Association and Kensington Senior Living. Claire, thank you so much. The Alzheimer's Association leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementias by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, which maximize quality care and support, working on a national and local level to provide care and support for all of those affected by Alzheimer's and other dementias. As Claire said, we have so many different dementias. Their free national 24/7 helpline is 1-800-272-3900. They're staffed by master level clinicians and specialists who provide confidential support and information to all of those affected in 200 languages, which is really huge. Kensington Senior Living, I work at Redwood City, North Atherton, but in whole, we have different communities. The KSL team is proud to offer care beyond what most other traditional assisted living and memory care communities can deliver. For example, as I spoke on, that high caregiver to resident ratio, which really exceed industry standards and help deepen connections between caregivers and residents. We have pocket programs, which are small group activities, that are tailored to different interests and abilities. And we also provide opportunities for friendship, which really boost a sense of mastery. We offer companionship and living environment to our couples also, which even if the care needs for each individual is not the same, we can offer comprehensive care there as well. We have complimentary meals for family and friends, which make a dining experience very exceptional. And the communities that we have at Kensington Senior Living are as follows. In California, we have the Kensington Sierra Madre, Kensington Place, Redwood City, North Atherton, my home base, the Kensington Redondo Beach. In Virginia, we have Kensington Falls Church, the Kensington of Reston. In Maryland, we have Kensington Park, and New York, Kensington White Plains. Claire, thank you so much for today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much.
Bye.